Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to SerenityOS Office Hours. Hopefully it works. It always works, but maybe today is the day when it finally doesn't. All right, I'm getting some signs of life. So, hello, everybody. Hello, Christopher. Rice 7th and HHGGFHGGDD. Sup, Leif. Hello, friends, indeed. It is Friday, so that means it's time for SerenityOS Office Hours, which is where we talk about SerenityOS or the Yacht programming language, Ladybird browser, any of the related projects within the Serenity sphere. And if this is your first time here, the basic format is that you ask whatever you want, and then we talk about it or look into it. Anything technical, non-technical, as long as it's related, should be good. Hello, Tim. Nikish. First time watching it live instead of a recording. Well, welcome to the live experience. Glad to have you here. Checha says that HHGGFHGGDD, aka Checha, had too many YouTube accounts. I wonder why somebody would want to have multiple YouTube accounts, but I suppose there is some utility in that. Let's see. Hey, Tim Flynn says, well, hello, friends. Time zone changes lets me catch this live for the first time. That is cool. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen you in the live chat, Tim. And I liked it was it like 2 weeks ago? When I think you came in, Tim came into the Discord chat like 2 hours after and was just fixing stuff that came up during office hours, which was really nice. What's up, everybody? Hello, Umberto with the golden yak. Very nice. Hello, Sam. All right. So yesterday was quite funny. Like I put out a new video that I recorded yesterday, and you might not have seen it, but basically I implemented additional font kerning support for this thing that came up on Twitter, and I thought it was pretty funny because, well, now I'm just kind of waiting for Rasmus to respond. So basically I posted a screenshot with bad kerning, and then the font or the type designer commented on it saying that it didn't look, well, he said it nicely, pointed out the kerning here, which was pretty lame. And I am really happy that it was something we could fix relatively easily. So now I have like this head full of open type and like font feature things, and I'm thinking maybe there's more stuff we should do, because in the course of implementing the kerning stuff, definitely saw a bunch of things that I just ignored, and that would make great things to have. So I think I'm probably gonna be self-baited into that one. Nicholas says, implementing ligatures would be interesting for a video, maybe. Yeah, perhaps. That seems to me like something that probably take more than a standard video to do, because as I understand it, like you would need to integrate. It's not just about like finding the glyph sequences that create a ligature, but also once you combine a sequence into a single glyph, then stuff like selection and cursor positioning and stuff like that also has to know about the fact that a ligature was used. So need to do a little bit of look ahead, I think, before committing to ligatures. Let's see, I'm missing a bunch of messages here. Zaggy says, well, hello, friends. I'm here for once as well, most likely lurking. Saying the video was a bit sizable. Yes, well, I tried to go as fast as I could, but it did take me a sizable amount of time, I admit, to get to the end of like going through the open type maze just to get to the X advanced adjustment data. It was a bit of a trek. Fikisar says, "What are you looking for in your top right corner? In videos, you seem to be trying to find something." I don't know what that refers to. In my top right corner. What do I usually have in the top right corner? I usually have nothing in the top right corner, I think. Yeah. Because I used to have the webcam in the top right corner for the longest time, so I've kind of set up all of my software so that there's nothing important in the top right corner. But then a while back, I moved it to the bottom right corner, and sometimes I still catch myself like editing text or clicking on something in the top bottom corner, and then I realize what I'm doing, and I think, oh crap, I have to scroll. So I still haven't adjusted to that, but in the top right corner, I think there's nothing typically. Marco says, "Hi Andreas, I found today your wife's songs on Spotify. They are incredible." Wow. That is something I will definitely tell her. I think she's in headphones right now. Otherwise, she would hear me saying this, and I'm sure she would be very happy. My wife, I haven't got her Spotify link memorized, obviously, but she is here on Twitter, and you can navigate your way there. From there to her Spotify and other things, if you want to check that out. She makes all the music that I use in my videos. So if you like that stuff, you'll find lots more of it. People presenting various yak bait here, like BiDi support, definitely. Andrew Castor says, "I think they're asking why you look up at the ceiling when thinking." Yes. Okay, yes, then it makes sense. I do look up at the ceiling, just like Andrew, apparently. It's my deep thinking stance. Yes. All right. Apparently people know this way better than I do. Everybody understood what it was. Okay, yeah, that's completely accurate. Fabian said, "I just finished the video and it was quite the labyrinth. Would it make sense to use spans in the future whenever you used C-style arrays there with helpers in the struct?" Yeah, probably. That would probably be a really nice type safety and bounds checking improvement, if possible. No, I think that would be great. Like helpers in the struct. There's no need to do it as bare bones as I did it yesterday. I honestly just felt a bit like I just wanted to get to the end of the maze and get the data. But given that there's so many more gpos and features and gsub using the same tables in OpenType, I think we're going to be editing that code a lot. So adding more helpers and just nicer, more ergonomic ways to get around those tables would be fantastic. Pseudonatural said, "Well, hello friends. Little question to you, Andreas. Have you ever had issues with using audio interfaces on Linux?" Oh, yes. Of course. I've been using Linux since 1997 for the first time, I think. So the first time I used Linux, I couldn't get audio to work at all. And then some time later, a few years after that, I was trying out on a different machine. And then you had to download this package called OSS, which came with a bunch of different audio drivers. It was the open sound system. And it had some interesting limitations, like only one process could play audio at a time. And I remember that was a source of frustration when the Flash player came out for Linux, because you couldn't have like MP3s playing and watch a Flash page that had Flash on it at the same time. Then you wouldn't get audio in one of them, and we don't have those problems anymore, but those are problems that I remember very vividly. Nowadays, though, I don't generally have very different. I don't generally have big problems with audio. There are some gotchas though, but I got so used to them from like always recording videos and stuff. So I know, for example, that if I go on a web-based video call, then after that, all of my audio input settings will be reset to some bad value. So I have to go and change them before I go on a live stream or record a video. Things like that. But yeah, unless you have a more specific question, it's hard to say. But yeah, sure, I've had random audio issues on Linux. Zaggy says, the signature look up to the top right and touch the beard look. Yes, indeed. Jeja says, Andreas, you seem to have very different personas on Discord, Twitter, and YouTube. Is this intentional? If so, is that because of different audiences, different forms of communication, or different subjects? I think the general persona is mostly the same, although I do try to put on like my most extroverted energy while I'm recording or streaming, because if I just sit here and don't say anything, it will be a bit less interesting to watch, I think. And it's not necessarily my sort of dominant personality trait. It's just something that I try to emphasize as much as I can when I'm making something for YouTube, just because that's what required for the content. But it's not something that's like intentionally meant to be different personas. It's more like just emphasizing different aspects of the same personality, I guess. And you kind of naturally get different things come out in something like Twitter, because if I'm posting on Twitter, then I usually take some time to edit and rewrite what I'm about to post. Whereas on Discord, maybe I would post without rewriting a bunch of times. So it's like less edited, less carefully worded on Discord. But I think those are the same personality, just sort of different reflections of it, maybe, if that makes sense. Rice 7th says, does Ladybird support WebGL at the moment? So we have like very, very basic WebGL hooked up, but I haven't tested it in forever. And actually, I don't even know if it's hooked up in Ladybird. I just know that we have it hooked up in Serenity itself. I don't know if Luke is here today, but Luke did some integration. I mean, it was probably a year ago or something. And it was like software emulated WebGL based on our libgl library. But eventually, obviously, we want to have WebGL in a way that uses hardware acceleration. It's just nobody has really picked that up as like a pet thing to work on, as far as I know. There are many things like that like, oh yeah, of course we want to have that. It's just that nobody picked it up as their thing. So there isn't any active progress on it right now. Hydegel says, how does the Ladybird browser handle YouTube? So I haven't looked at that in a while, but it's definitely not not by any means working. We can kind of load the front page. It takes a bunch of time. It is not going to render everything very correctly. And sometimes I get stuck on this cookie confirmation thing, actually. Yeah, so as you can see, it's kind of broken. And let's see if I can get past it. No, it doesn't let me go past. Oh, wait, maybe it did. And if we see the thing here in the background, we have various errors scrolling past. There's a lot of these calc expansions that we're not supporting. Should probably improve that error message a little bit so we can see what expression is failing. But yeah, as far as I remember, I think YouTube wants custom elements and probably a bunch of random other things that we don't support yet. And then, of course, we don't have any video decoding support in our browser yet. But as with everything else, YouTube is improving over time. Let's see. Sam says the debug message for calc failing has more details if you have the CSS debug flags enabled. Yeah, I just thought, what if this message would be, why can't this be slightly nicer? Also, why does it say unimplement? Unimplement, like, fix me, please unimplement calc expansion. Can we just like print out the calc value that's failing? Calc value? ToString? At least that would be like a little more interesting, right? Because then, I mean, I think I'm the one who added that message, so it is my fault that it doesn't say. But if we do this, then yeah, see, now we can see at least. That's nice, right? So you can see, oh, I could go and implement that. Like, because I think the problem with calc expansion, so the all of these error messages on YouTube, they're basically saying like, oh, we can't resolve this. But if you look at what it is, it's like a constant. This is like something you can evaluate in a constant way. Just 16 pixels divided by 2. The problem is with expressions like this one, which has a percentage in it. Although even here, I guess you could do some trickery, make it 25% maybe. No, with percentages, we generally run into the issue that we can't resolve them to a constant pixel value. And because of that, we just throw up our hands and say, oh, I don't know what this calc value should be. Maybe the higher level problem is that we don't have a way to resolve calc values consistently. I'm not sure. I feel like we've looked at this before. Anyway, let me see so that I don't lose track here. Andrew Caster says it works in Ladybird by pulling in our software rasterizer and libgl and libsoft GPU. At least it used to. Yeah, that's what I remember as well. I guess we have a test page for is there a WebGL test page? I would have thought we had one. MISC, of course. Base, res, HTML, MISC, WebGL. Okay. I believe this is clearing using WebGL. So I guess we do have WebGL, although it is, if this is the only test page we have, then you can probably guess that the maturity of the WebGL implementation is not super stellar yet. Let's see. Rice7 says, you should then make a YouTube on Ladybird series, just like the Discord series. Well, perhaps we should. Still working on that Discord series. I need to make more of those because that's super fun. Zaggy says, I've been so distracted working on some improvements to a hex editor called I'm Hex that I haven't gotten back around to video stuff for Serenity. Soon. That would be great, Zaggy. Zaggy makes super sweet video things, so always happy to have you back working on that or anything else that you might want to work on. It would be really interesting to take some of the awesome video stuff that Zaggy's been making and try to get it integrated with the web stack somehow. Let's see. James Pulio said, IMHEX is very cool. I don't use it all the time, but when I do, I'm very happy with how it works. Okay, I have never tried IMHEX. What is this IMHEX? I feel like now we need to know more about this. A hex editor for reverse engineers. Okay, it seems like they've been at it for a while. That's cool. Wait, what does it say here? Programmers and people who value their retinas when working at 3 a.m. Wow, look at that. Looks pretty elite. All right. Hydogel says, how hard would it be to implement screen recording software for SerenityOS? I guess that's only as hard as whatever format you want to record as. So if you are willing to record to like a folder or a directory full of PNG files, that would take take a couple of minutes to put something together. But you probably would want to encode to like a slightly nicer video format of some type, and we don't really have a video encoder. So I would imagine that implementing a screen recording software would be primarily an issue of building like a good encoder for some format. Appleful says, hello, just noticed you used some sort of Git magic in your last video, like GS and Gap. Can you share how did you create Git aliases? Sure, so I have alias like this. This is the whole magic. So I just have these things in my shell init script, and there isn't any other trick to it. The one that people always ask about is Gap, which is just an alias for git add-p, and it is awesome. And once you get used to git add-p, then it's hard to go back to any other kind of Git workflow. So definitely recommend. And these are just my personal aliases. You know, if you have a different workflow, I would totally recommend adding aliases for the things that you commonly use, because Git is like natural Git is a little bit verbose, I think, and reducing it to 2-letter, 3-letter things makes it a bit nicer to work with. Umberto says, hi Andreas, what's your favorite userland application? Ladybird and browser doesn't count. My favorite userland application. Well, I am a large fan of many of our applications, actually. Such as Pixel Paint is one of my personal favorite, really like. And I really like seeing it sort of grow and improve, because I remember it was such a clunky little thing for a while in the beginning, and then it just more people started working on it, and it gained some really awesome tools, and the Tims have been doing such awesome work. Tim Slater and Tim Ledbetter and a bunch of other people as well, just making more tools for it and adding cool features. And I really like it. And people were a couple of weeks ago, people were trying to yak bait me into building a vector graphics or vector illustration application. And I was thinking about that and thinking, like, how could we build such a thing and sort of have the same type of UI as Pixel Paint does, without having to rewrite a bunch of this code, but also not copy pasting it. And I feel like there are things going on in this applications that would be nice to generalize so that we could use them as component, I think. Let's see. Andrew Caster says, is there a common household appliance that describes your affinity for every userland application? Which one is for Shell? Hack Studio. Are you a large stand mixer for Hex Editor? Andrew, I cannot follow what you are even saying. But I'm sure there's some comedic intent here, but I'm lost. Zaggy says, looking at the Pixel Paint interface makes me happy. Right, it's pretty quaint and pleasant, right? I think, in my view, though, like the left side of the UI is just significantly better than the right side. This area here, like, it's not that it's not doing its job, it's just that it feels kind of clunky. And the the mid-90s Photoshop user in me kind of just wants these to be detachable and be like floating tool windows or whatever. But somehow this area feels clunky, and I don't know exactly how to solve it. I think we're lacking kind of a dockable widget that can be transformed, that can be like switched between a window and a docked tool area thing. We're missing something like that, and that would be a good primitive to have as we build more sophisticated applications. Because before Pixel Paint, like, most of our applications have been fairly simple in terms of like UI functionality exposed. This one in Hack Studio. And Hack Studio takes kind of a different approach because it's less mouse centric. But here in a mouse centric UI, I feel like we need some better widgets to somehow improve the right hand side of the screen. Anyway, Kevin Joseph said, what are your thoughts on coding standards like Misra and AutoSAR? Did you have to work in a professional environment where these were enforced, maybe back at Apple? No, I have never worked in an environment where these types of things are enforced. I've always worked in fairly like laid back programming shops in terms of process and verification and things like that. I mean, in the great scheme of things, like, I've definitely worked in shops that were hard asses about unit testing and like macro and micro unit testing, but never did anything with these kind of things. And I think in general, like, enforcing any kind of standard like that might be valuable. I don't know. I haven't looked at the data. I haven't gotten the sales pitch for things like this because I've never been, within range of a project using them. So I don't think I could really comment on it in any kind of qualified way. But if you boil it down to, do I think static analysis is good? Then yes, I think static analysis is good. And using static analysis to enforce like a set of like guidelines for more robust, more secure programs, I think that sort of stuff makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I can't comment on these kind of things individually or in particular because I have no experience. Kleines Filmröllchen says, Andreas, what is your opinion on operating system sound effects? There was a little bit of hype yesterday when I said that I had plans for Serenity sound effects. What's your take? I think operating system sound effects are cute, but that's something that needs to be like very optional. It should never be mandatory, because I boot Serenity many times every day, and whatever boot sound you put, I'm going to be very annoyed by that sound. So it needs to be something optional. But I think there is something really endearing about having a system go like beep and boop and things like that. Maybe one of the... Like, you have to look at each sound cue, I think, and decide if it makes sense. Because I remember, was it like Windows 98 or something, where they had like this click sound where you would click on something, you could hear your mouse click, and then the computer would make a clicking sound as well in response to your click. And that never made sense to me. That always felt so, I don't know, redundant. So, but when it comes to like, hey, calling the user's attention to something like a notification pop-up, or like, oh, you have mail or whatever, I think those things are cool. And I think we should have things like that. but they need to sound nice now. Let's see. Tim Schumacher says, well, you said that you're a fan of pixel paint. All right. Yes. Thank you for explaining Andrew's now obvious references. I am a slow boy today. Sorry about that. Andrew says, fan pun abandoned. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm not fast today. Okay. I had to, here come the excuses. So I had to get up early to drive my mom to the train. And I'm not used to being up so early, and things like that. I'm sorry. Let's see. Kleines is excited about detachable sub-windows. I think detachable sub-windows would be a really smooth thing to add to our system. Especially if you can do them in a way where they're sort of usable everywhere. And historically, like every time that I've used detachable sub-windows, they always feel a bit like hard to put back in the box. Like taking them out of the box, like detaching them from the window is always easy. But getting them to go back in the window, somehow, I don't think I've ever used any application where that is implemented in a way that feels 100% nice. Like it's always fidgety to get them back into, to get the toothpaste back in the tube. So that would be my sort of main focus area. Just make that part of the interaction good. If we can do that, I think we would have the nicest dockable widgets ever. Revive Back says floating windows are so annoying it's easy to mess up. It is easy to mess up, but what if we did it really, really nice? What if we did it really, really well, so that you can decide which one you want? Zaggy says moving sections around definitely would be handy, but I've always preferred having my image editor sections docked into the window. Yes, of course. I like that too nowadays, but if we made it optional, I think it could be a very reasonable thing to support. Let's see. Jill says, how far are we from the first video made entirely in SerenityOS? Does Serenity's QEMU port handle running Serenity in Serenity? So Tim I saw Tim here earlier. Yeah, Tim Schumacher. I definitely at some point had Serenity running QEMU running Serenity, and I think he said that like booting up took like 40 minutes or something. So it was ridiculously slow. And oh man, there was some problem, like the way that QEMU, our port of QEMU was like reading the system clock over and over and over again, and we had to do like a full syscall to do that because they asked us for, I think, like high resolution timestamps, and we have an optimization for low resolution timestamps, but the QEMU port was asking for high resolution timestamps. And I think when we made a patch to the port to use low resolution timestamps in QEMU, and that was, I think that was a pretty good speed up. So I don't know how long it takes to boot now, but I'm sure it's several minutes still. It's just, it's one of those things where it doesn't get a lot of eyes on it, but I'm sure there are some easy wins we could figure out if we just take a proper look at it. Tim says, we have since switched QEMU to coarse timestamps with no apparent decrease in emulation quality. Well, that is fantastic. Wow, my memory is somewhat reasonable. Tim says, however, the boot time after that change was 40 minutes. All right, before it was 1 hour, 16 minutes. Okay, so my memory is good at remembering some things, but numbers still suck. All right. Let's see. Andrew was sharing his experience with Misra. Misra is designed to force you to write code in a specific way that static analyzers from the late 90s will understand. We have better tools now. We should be able to prove safety of more complex code. The style is extremely distasteful, especially when you know modern C++. Misra. I feel like there's a miserable pun here that probably gets used a lot by people who are in that world, then I would assume. Um, let's see. Andrew Bent says, do you have specific legacy fonts that you wish would inspire the vector fonts that might be made for Serenity? Of course. I am a huge fan of the Microsoft core fonts from back in the day, like the Tahomas and the Verdanas, and basically like all the different screen typefaces made by Matthew Carter from Microsoft, I think are absolutely awesome. And if you haven't seen it, Matthew Carter had a TED Talk, which I thought was, wow, that's a really, really gunky link. Excuse me. Can I get that cleaned up, please? All right, here we go. If you haven't seen Matthew Carter's TED Talk, you might enjoy it if you like those typefaces. I really enjoyed it. But I've been in such a fonty mood lately. I just want to do more text stuff. I feel like we should like the difference in quality that you feel when you improve the way text looks in the system is so noticeable, to me at least. And like yesterday, after I got the improvements to kerning working for Inter, I just want to improve other aspects of it as well. Anyway. But yeah, Andrew, like I definitely want the inspiration from the Matthew Carter typefaces. I think if we could do something like some kind of slightly more modern version of Tahoma would be really beautiful. Or not version, but like something inspired by that. I think although part of my appreciation for these typefaces is it's like a little bit strange because I first saw them not smooth and not like the natural shapes, but I saw them at like small sizes, heavily hinted in non-anti-aliased rendering, right? In like Windows 2000 and such. So it's weird to see them. It was weird like the first time I would see them larger and like the proper shapes, but they are still so beautiful. Anyway. Antonio says, I remember how Tahoma looked really great on the LCD panel of a very old Windows PDA. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what that's kind of what I remember as well. And here I'm using Inter here as my UI font, but if we swippity swap it back to Kotica, which we typically have as the default font. So this one is obviously super heavily inspired by Tahoma, and it draws heavily from Tahoma, but also from the X11 default font called Fixed, which I thought it was an interesting thing to combine when I was designing the original version of this typeface. Let's see. Tim says, in fact, I think we're almost ready to make the first part of self-hosting semi-official, considering that I have implemented everything needed to extract the downloaded tarballs. Totally unrelated to that, any suggestions on getting people to review boring and math-heavy PRs that pretty much just follow a specification/reference implementation? So far, I appear to be utterly failing with that. The easiest way to do that, I guess, is you could just ask me directly and I will look at it. So, but please ask me directly after the stream, because I have a weird tendency to forget everything that I talk about on these streams, because I become so high energy while I'm streaming, and then right when the stream stops, my energy goes down and I forget everything. And that's not intentional. I don't know why it happens. Let's see. Paul said, those Matthew Carter TTFs are optimized for small pixels, specifically for screens. Right. Yeah, that was kind of the driving factor behind the design, was that I don't know if it's actually completely accurate, but I recall Matthew Carter himself saying that these were some of the first typefaces that were designed sort of screen first, and they were designed like with the medium of a computer screen as the primary medium. And I don't know if that had been done before, but it feels like it probably had been done before, but I'm not going to take away from the man. Let's see. Tim says, I'd not suggest getting into LZMA decompression live on stream. Yeah, that sounds like something that requires a little bit of focus to understand how it works. But more seriously, like if you want somebody to look at your decompression PR, I think Edon wrote a bunch of our existing decompression code, so he might be a good person to ask if he's around. And yeah, that's the first person I would think of. But if nobody picks it up, I will happily look at it. And to comment on what you were saying, like the fact that we are close to self-hosting once again, that is great. It's funny with self-hosting that it's like we've been self-hosting at various points in the past, but then we complicate our build process so that we're no longer self-hosting. So getting back to self-hosting again, that is very exciting. So kudos for pushing us towards that. Valtteri said, I just recently learned how to play FreeCell. I've been playing it a bunch. FreeCell. I remember FreeCell. I don't remember the rules, but I remember playing it on Windows NT 3 a long time ago. I always enjoyed those old like Microsoft desktop games from that era. Sir Enough says, what does self-hosting mean? So in this context, self-hosting refers to building the entire Serenity operating system within Serenity. So essentially like starting Serenity, and then inside of Serenity, you download the source code for Serenity and then build the whole system within itself. Like you don't build it on Linux like we normally do. And that is something that I think, according to Tim, the thing that doesn't work at the moment that he's been working on is that we can't decompress some of the tarballs that we need to decompress because they are compressed with LZMA compression. So Tim just went and implemented an LZMA decompressor. Let's see. Sam says, we can keep self-hosting working easily. Just get the poor slow CI to build Serenity inside Serenity. Oh, yes. What a great idea. Our poor CI. Yeah. And there's just like more and more things that we should be throwing at CI, but the builds are going to get so slow. I feel like we have to be a little bit judicious with what we do on CI. But we'll see. Andrew says, we just need to be able to run the Azure DevOps client code on top of libjs instead of Node. Okay. I wonder. Okay, I don't wonder. I'm not going to look into that. Michael Hardiman says, what's the plan for tackling drivers? Do you plan to port Linux drivers? So I don't have a plan for anything. And I know everybody who hangs out on these streams a lot, they've heard me say this a million times, but it bears saying again. I just don't really have a plan, and I kind of just focus on the things that seem interesting and important right now. The strategy that we've had for doing drivers has been, if somebody needs a driver to get it running on their hardware, then they make that driver. And the drivers that we all need together are the drivers required for the virtualized systems. So like QEMU or VirtualBox, VMware, things like that. Like those are sort of drivers that many people care about, but there have been cases where somebody had oh, I have this network card, I'm going to make a driver for it. Um, it's never really been a big personal interest of mine to run Serenity on like random hardware, but for other people, this is super interesting, and I'm happy that that's the case, because the more different interests we have, the more variety in the code. But there isn't any kind of let's say there isn't any goal to have any kind of Linux driver compatibility. There's we're not trying to import code from anything else, any other project or any other system. We are happy to have less functionality and worse functionality because it's our functionality, and we don't mind that it takes time to build everything ourselves, because it's all about the journey and sort of the excitement and the fun of building all this stuff with friends, right? You could absolutely tack on drivers and things from other systems, and bring up a bunch of functionality very quickly, but then you lose all the fun of what we're trying to do. Andre says, maybe some of the longer and more expensive CI steps could be postponed to once a day, some sort of nightly test. Yeah, we have some things. As Andrew says, we do some nightly things already, and adding more nightly things, I think that's a pretty reasonable strategy. Like, and you could even do them like, it doesn't have to be nightly. Like, you could also have a strategy where you just run when possible, but it doesn't have to be for every push to master, but just like every time the runner is available, it just fetches the latest commit and builds that. Let's see. Kumari says, hello, I'm an Android developer and I want to get started in low-level programming like kernel, but I'm a little bit lost as to where to start from. I have learned C and C++. If you want to work on low-level programming like a kernel, I would recommend building a kernel. Since that's the only thing you mentioned that you would like to do, I would recommend doing that. If you speak C and C++, then building a kernel would be a very educational project for you. So I recommend typing into Google how to build a kernel in C, and see where it takes you. Tim says, the main problem with nightly tests is that we won't catch breakages before we merge a PR. Right, but at least we'll catch them before 3 months have passed, which still has value, you would have to agree, right? Kincaid says, is Yacht still written in Rust, or is it written in itself now? It's written in itself. We got rid of the Rust-based compiler a long time ago. In fact, I don't remember when that was. Rust. When did we get rid of it? Remove Rust. Remove the Rust-based compiler, July last year. So it has been written in Yacht has been written in Yacht for a long time, and there shouldn't be any remnants of the Rust-based version. Well, hello, Islam Ali. How's it going? Eric says, not many PRs have a turnover of less than a day. Yeah, well, I don't think that we would run we wouldn't run PR code on these nightly runners anyway. So what really matters is, like, if we can catch more problems, even if we can't catch them before they get merged, if at least we can catch them after they get merged, that's still better than not catching them until somebody randomly runs into it, like weeks or months later. Oli G says, what do you think of Haiku/BOS programmed in C++? I don't really have much thoughts or many thoughts about those systems. I read a book about BOS once and I thought it sounded neat. But I've never been a big user of it. It doesn't really appeal to me somehow. Like I tried it and it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't feel like home to me. Um, the one thing I know about Haiku is I think they're stuck on a really old version of C++, which doesn't seem very nice to me. But I mean, that's not like a slight against the Haiku developers. It's just a technical decision that they've made, and one that I hope they would, um, change their minds on someday. But outside of that, I don't really have any thoughts about it. Tim Flynn says, was there anything you found particularly surprising implementing web specs from scratch versus working on an already existing implementation? For example, I was surprised by how exact spec step ordering is. Like, you have to get the length in step 3 before checking XYZ in step 4 because it's all observable. So I was fairly used to this type of like very observable spec step orderings because I had done a bunch of work like that in WebKit in the past, like getting like 1 million conformance tests to pass and things like that. But it's definitely been surprising doing things from scratch in areas that I had no prior experience in. Like before I started building Serenity and Ladybird and all that stuff, I had never really worked on CSS layout. It was always like this black box that other people worked on, but I didn't really understand or know anything about. And I was very surprised with sort of the opposite of what you're saying, which is that it's so underspecified. Like CSS layout is so vague and like hand wavy in ways that the HTML or the DOM specifications are not. And it's more like they're just telling you a bunch of unrelated, interesting trivia about how the page should work. And then you have to figure out what are the connections and implications of these different nuggets of information that you get in the various specs. I guess before I worked on CSS layout, I assumed that the CSS specifications would be more kind of didactic or whatever, that they would be more telling you what to do step by step. And some things are step by step, but the majority of it is very like, this thing needs to be at least this far away from that thing. You figure out how that happens. Hydrogel says, what is the state of memory safety in Yacht? Is there a build system specifically for Yacht? The state of memory safety is that Yacht uses automatic reference counting to prevent use after free issues. So it's a similar memory safety design to languages like Swift. At the moment, there is a bug that allows you to create temporary reference that can outlive the referee, because that's a buggy implementation of the reference thing that Ali added a while ago that we just need to fix. But at a design level, the idea is that we use reference counting to prevent being able to have like invalid references to things. And then we want to have the lightweight references, but only in like narrow specific cases where we can statically prove that the reference doesn't outlive the thing it's referring to. But we do have a bug in that area right now. Is there a build system specifically for Yacht? No, not at the moment. Although people keep throwing the word mocked around, like make for Yacht. So I don't think it's any more than a word right now, though. Let's see. 11 days to update Firefox. Yeah, indeed. Knut Bluetooth says, only 32-bit Haiku is limited to GCC2. x86-64 Haiku is compiled with much newer GCC, and therefore you can use newer GC++ features, and they do in some parts. Well, that's great. That's great for them. I'm happy to hear that, because being stuck in GCC2 is GCC2 is pretty dang old, so that is great. Thank you for letting me know. YJK says, I was thinking about building my own web browsing engine, but I really don't know where I should start. I would start with parsing HTML into a DOM tree and implementing the HTML tokenizer and parser algorithms. And if you implement those and then you still want to build the rest of a browser, then ask again, and then I can tell you more. But any browser, you'll have to start with these because it's kind of, I mean, you don't have to start with these, but it is an easy way to build something that's really straightforward and gets you into the right headspace for implementing more of these algorithms. And if I were to start building libweb today, I would have implemented it by doing the tokenization algorithm here first and then the parsing algorithm. I didn't take that approach initially with libweb, and I ended up wasting a lot of time because of that. Serenov says, Jagd har makt. Indeed. Eric W says, is there some more information on the deprecated string variants somewhere? Like a guide on how to convert them, how to propagate errors? Didn't somebody make a document for that? I thought we had something called migrations. I think somebody made some, I thought somebody made some migration page about deprecated string. If you have any questions about deprecated string, just ask on Discord and people can help you get up to speed. Let's see. Sarfraz says, do you think that the feature freeze during initial Yak development phase stopped the momentum that it had? I have no idea. But yeah, so we had a feature freeze where we said, like, please stop adding features to the Rust-based compiler while we rewrite it in Yacht. But then we've added tons of features after that. So I don't think so. I think there was there was a fair amount of false momentum in the start where people who had nothing to do with Serenity and no interest in the Serenity project, they just heard like, oh, there's a new language. So a lot of people sort of flocked to Yacht because of that. And then they kind of disappeared again. And we also had a lot of people who, or not a lot, but a bunch of people who heard, ooh, somebody's doing something with Rust. I want to participate in that. And then when we stopped using Rust, then they all disappeared. And nothing against that. It's just that that's what they were interested in, right? They were not interested in Serenity or like building something for Serenity. They had other interests, and when we were no longer overlapping with their interests, then they disappeared. And I don't have any issue with that. And I'm happy that the people who work on the language so far have been people who have like, the people who work on the language today tend to be people who are interested in Serenity as a greater project, not just specifically interested in the language. Let's see. Simon says, notice today that empty input elements have the wrong height, so it looks like libweb will soon be the second engine to support the CSS LH unit. Yeah, right. If you don't have any text in the input element, I think we don't, we don't calculate the height based on the strut or whatever it's called. We should fix that. Or maybe you can fix that, Simon. I know that you can do stuff like that. I've seen you do all kinds of stuff. Let's see. Oh, Sam says, we don't have a migrations document. We have issues on GitHub. Right, there's a migration tag on GitHub. Everybody telling me here that there's a migration tag. Yes, there's a migration tag on GitHub. Check that out. Anyway, Bart says, that's typical Rust Station nonsense, and I say that as a Rust Station. Heh. I don't fault people for being excited about a language, but it's it's nice that I like it that the people who were excited for short-term reasons, I like it that they're not trying to pull the project in various short-term directions anymore. I find it a nicer environment. Anyway, this is 5:02 p.m. and I gotta go, so we're gonna end the stream here. Thank you all for coming, for hanging out, and for all the questions and the conversations. I hope that everybody's going to have a great weekend programming and other things. If you do end up working on Serenity related stuff, please come hang out on Discord and share what you're doing. If you have a large PR related to decompression of some file format, like, I don't know, let me know and we'll take a look at it. Otherwise, have a great weekend and see you all next time.